I looked out the window. The building looked familiar, too familiar. Then I remembered that building had been demolished 10 years ago. I had only ever seen photographs. But there I was, right in front of it, and the bus doors wouldn't open from inside. That took about 4 seconds to process. For seconds where my brain kept insisting there was a normal explanation. There wasn't. It had been a long day, the kind of long that starts before you're ready and doesn't let up. I'd been in back-to-back meetings since 8 in the morning. The last one ran 40 minutes over. By the time I got out of the building, it was past 10 at night, and the city had already gone quiet in that specific way it does on weekdays. Not empty, just reduced. Fewer people, slower pace. The kind of night where everyone's still out seen finishing something rather than starting. I didn't drive to work that day. My car was in the shop. Nothing serious. A brake issue my mechanic had been telling me to fix for 2 months, and I'd finally stopped ignoring. So I took the bus in the morning and planned to take it back. Line 7. I'd taken it dozens of times over the years. 40 minutes door to door on a good night. 50 if traffic was slow through the center. The stop was half a block from my office. I stood there with my jacket over my arm because the evening had turned warmer than expected. A woman with a stroller was waiting too. We didn't speak. The bus came in about 6 minutes. I got on, paid, moved to the back. There were maybe 8 other passengers. Nobody I recognized. The seats were the standard kind, slightly worn fabric, the color of something that used to be blue. I sat by the window on the right side, 3rd row from the back. I remember that detail because I always sit in the same spot when I take this long, a habit I'd never thought about until later. I put my jacket in my lap. I looked at my phone for a while. Emails I didn't answer. A message from my sister I told myself I'd respond to when I got home. The city moved past the window. Streetlights, storefronts, the long stretch of road after the underpass where the buildings get shorter and the gaps between them get wider. I don't remember falling asleep. That's the thing about that kind of tiredness. It doesn't ask permission. One moment I was watching the road. The next moment I wasn't anywhere. I woke up because the bus had stopped, not a traffic stop, a full stop. Engine still running, but stationary. The vibration of the engine to the seat was what pulled me out. Something changed in it, a shift in frequency, and some part of my brain registered the difference even through sleep. I opened my eyes. The bus was dark inside, not completely. The small overhead lights were still on, the ones that stay on when the main cabin lights go off. Dim yellow, enough to see by but not enough to make anything feel normal. I looked around. The bus was empty, not just the back rows. Every seat. The woman with the stroller was gone. The man in the gray coat who had been sitting near the front was gone. Everyone. Just me and 8 vacant seats and the hum of the engine. I checked my phone. 1:48 a.m. I had gotten on at 10:23. 3.5 hours. I stood up too fast and had to grab the seat in front of me. My jacket fell on the floor. I left. I walked to the front of the bus, and that's when I saw the driver's seat. Empty. The wheel was still. The doors were closed. The engine was running, but the driver was gone. I looked at the panel beside the door, the one with the button passengers used to request a stop. I pressed it. Nothing happened. I pressed it again. The light didn't come on. I went to the door itself and pushed. Pulled. The mechanism didn't respond. I found the emergency release handle above the door, the red one, the one they show you in the safety card, and I pulled it down. It moved about 2 inches. Then it stopped, like something was blocking from outside. I went to the nearest window, the sliding kind, the small ones near the top. I got it open about 4 inches. Cold air came in. I looked out. The bus was parked in a large open space. Concrete ground, old painted lines, barely visible, the kind that fade when no one repaints them years. Floodlights on tall poles, 2 of them working, one dark, and in front of the bus, maybe 30 meters ahead, a building, 2 stories, wide facade, the old style of municipal architecture, thick columns at the entrance, large windows now boarded up, a sign above the main doors too faded to read from this distance, a covered waiting area along the front with rows of metal benches, most of them tipped over or missing entirely. I knew that building. I had seen it in an article once, years ago, a piece about urban development, before and after photographs. The city's old central bus terminal, built in the 1960s, closed in 2008, demolished in 2010. I remembered the photograph specifically because someone in the comments had written about taking their last bus from there as a child. I stared at it for a long time. The building was intact. Not ruins, not a shell. Intact. Boarded windows, yes. Peeling paint, yes. But standing, whole, the entrance columns casting shadows in the floodlight, the covered waiting area, the faded sign. I pressed my face closer to the 4-inch gap in the window. The concrete lot was empty. No other vehicles. No people. The floodlights hummed. I could hear them faintly now. That specific electrical hum of old outdoor lighting. One of the metal benches in the waiting area was upright. Something was on it. I couldn't tell what from this distance. I pulled back from the window. My phone had no signal, not one bar. I tried anyway, called my sister, called a coworker, called the general emergency number. Nothing, not even a connection attempt, just silence. I went back to the emergency door release and tried again. Same result, 2 inches, then resistance. I tried the windows on both sides of the bus. All of them opened 4 inches and stopped. The limiters were gauged. Standard on city buses. You can't open them further without tools. I didn't have tools. I sat down in the driver's seat. I don't know why. Maybe because it was the front of the bus and the front felt like the direction of solutions. The dashboard was lit up normal, fuel gauge, engine temperature, everything in the expected range. The keys were in the ignition. I looked at the gear indicator. The bus was in park. I had never driven a bus. I thought about it for a moment, seriously considered. Then I thought about the concrete lot, the limited visibility, the fact that I didn't know what was beyond the floodlights, and I decided against it. I went back to the window instead, opened it to 4 inches again, looked at the bench. Someone was sitting on it now. I hadn't seen them before, or they hadn't been there before. I couldn't be certain. They were sitting at the far end of the bench, completely still, facing the bus. I couldn't make out a face at this distance. Dark clothing, hands in their lap, just sitting, watching. I stayed very still. They didn't move. I closed the window. I sat on the floor of the bus, back against the seats, below the window line. My breathing had changed without me telling it, shallow, quieter. I checked my phone again. Still no signal. 2:11 a.m. now. I stayed on the floor for a long time. At some point the engine changed pitch, just slightly. A shift in the idle, like something engaging. Then a sound I recognized, the pneumatic hiss of the door mechanism. I looked up. The front doors were opening. Not all the way, halfway. Then they stopped. Cold air filled the bus again. I looked at the open doors, at the steps leading down to the concrete, at the darkness beyond the reach of the floodlights. I couldn't see the bench from this angle. I didn't know if the figure was still there. I stood up. I walked to the doors. I stood at the top of the steps for what felt like a long time. The air outside smelled like concrete and cold and something faintly metallic. The floodlights hummed. Nothing moved in the lot that I could see. I went down the steps. The concrete was solid under my feet. I walked fast, not running, toward the edge of the lot where the floodlights reached. Behind me I heard the bus doors hiss closed. I didn't turn around. I kept walking until the light gave out and I was standing in darkness at what felt like the edge of a road. A road, asphalt, real. I followed it. 40 minutes later I was at a gas station. Open, fluorescent lights. A man behind the counter who looked at me the way people look at someone who has been outside too long. I used his phone, called my sister. She came and got me. The police found the bus the next morning, parked on the grounds of a wholesale warehouse on the city's eastern outskirts. Driver reported it stolen at 11:45. He had stopped briefly and someone had taken it while he stepped out. The lot where it was found matched the address of the warehouse, which had been built in 2015, on land that used to be the old central terminal. The figure on the bench will never explain. The police said the lot had been empty when they arrived. No signs of anyone. The emergency door release showed no signs of external tamper. My jacket was still on the floor of the bus when they found it. I took the bus to work again 3 weeks later. I don't know why. Stubbornness, maybe. The same line, same stop, same seat, 3rd row from the back, right side, window. I don't fall asleep on buses. I watch the stops. Every one. I count them. I make sure I know exactly where I am at all times. Last week the bus slowed down between stops. Just for a moment. No reason, no traffic, no light. It just slowed, then continued. I looked out the window. For a second, just a second, the building on the corner looked wrong. Too old, too wide, the wrong kind of windows. Then we moved past it and it was just a building again. I haven't been able to stop thinking about that second.